Really good to be here.
So I want to start with the government shutdown. The last shutdown during Trump's first term was 34 days. It cost the US economy about $11 billion. $3 billion permanently lost, according to the Congressional Budget Office. What is the true cost of a government shutdown? Beyond GDP, how does it impact investor confidence, public trust, and institutional credibility?
Well, if you remember going back several years, we had a lot of budget shutdowns mostly under Republicans, and some of those shutdowns ended up cumulatively costing the U.S. its gold-plated credit rating. We had credit write-downs. Big ratings agencies downgraded the credit of the U.S. after multiple government shutdowns. But beyond that, I would actually draw a link between the kind of instability, the sense that we really have this polarized politics in America that began when shutdowns became a more regular deal, and the fact that you have fewer foreign buyers in each treasury auction that the United States has. I think that there's a link where investors globally and investors at home just feel that, look, there is political risk now in the US of a kind that you only used to see in emerging markets. It's not the same. The US still has the dollar as the global reserve, although that's beginning to change. Currencies are becoming more multipolar, but it's really concerning. And I think it's something that we've only just begun to see the ramifications of, really.
And Trump has suggested that some federal workers might not receive back pay. Many are required legally to work through the shutdown. Would denying pay
Yeah.
to essential workers be illegal? And what would that signal about labor protections?
Um, and nothing good. And that's something that's already been an issue. Trump has really come down on the National Labor Relations Board. A lot of labor activists are very concerned about the way he's treated labor rights in this country. Whether it actually is illegal, which it certainly seems like it would be on paper, would be up to the courts to decide. The courts, interestingly, have been ruling at the federal level against Trump in a lot of areas. The Supreme Court has been upholding, some of the more extreme actions that we're seeing. So that's a question that we can't answer right now. But what I will say is, again, this would lead to a certain amount of economic instability, not just in Washington, but beyond. There are a lot of federal workers that have their hands, touching a lot of different operations around the country. That could potentially be yet another tailwind for a recession in the U.S.
Yeah. And I want to turn to the trade war, which is hitting some key US industries quite hard, especially soybeans, the largest US export
Yeah.
to China. In 2024, China bought some $12.6 billion worth. This year, it's zero. China has turned to Brazil and Argentina instead, and most soybeans are sold between October and December. If that window closes, the losses could be permanent. So, Rana, what happens if US farmers lose their biggest buyer for good? Can this market be recovered?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly going to need to be diversified, and that is the byword for everybody right now, with the tariff situation being what it is, and with the sense that, look, we're in a new economic era. The U.S. and China are decoupling, no question about it, and so supply chains are going to need to be refigured. New buyers are going to need to be found for U.S. commodities. What I find so interesting about this is that the place that China is getting soybeans from, you mentioned Brazil, Argentina, very interesting, both in Latin America. And Latin America, I think, is going to be one of these warring grounds, these battlefields where both the US and China are going to square off for trading partners. You see the US bailing out Argentina. Well, Argentina is also where the Chinese are buying cut rate soybeans instead of getting them from the US. So it's a really interesting, concerning, challenging geopolitical arbitrage going on right now.
I want to turn to Canada and the US trade. So Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney today to discuss trade. And unlike many other countries, Canada has yet to secure a bilateral deal with the US. What's preventing that?
There shouldn't be anything preventing. If there is any country that the US should be getting closer to, it's Canada. For all sorts of reasons: rich source of natural resources, important security partner in the Arctic, which is becoming a real geopolitical hot zone. The US and China and Russia are all fighting over territory, rare earth minerals, more shipping being done through the region. Very important to have Canada on board. in that area. I suspect that this may come down to personality types. I predict a deal will be made eventually. It's just impossible to think that the U.S. and Canada would be in a long-term trade war. Certainly, it would be pretty devastating for the Canadians, who do need the U.S. in terms of trade more than the U.S. needs Canada.
Rana Foroohar, great to get your analysis across many different topics. Thanks so much.
Thank you.